get to the Pro Bowl games. C.J. Stroud's disappointing performance in the precision passing.
Oh,
he didn't win.
Oh, he didn't win?
He didn't win.
Who
He
won?
lost to Baker Mayfield. I mean, if that's not a lead-worthy topic on a Saturday, I don't know what is.
Are we sure that C.J. Stroud is the guy?
Is he elite?
Does he have the Mamba mentality?
Well, actually, he does, because what they were doing with the precision passing. Not to get too into the weeds on the precision passing here.
You watched that?
I did, yes. And he had Peyton Manning as his advisor.
Okay. How did he lose?
Eli Manning was advising
How did Baker Mayfield win this thing?
So essentially, when the final round of the precision passing, once you hit a certain target, that target's gone.
Okay.
But I believe the 1-point targets just stayed. So Baker Mayfield was just like pinging these 1-point targets while CJ was taking some more shots, and he didn't hit everything. And so essentially, I believe they were just going back and forth trading 1-point targets. And Peyton and CJ were just like, all right, screw this. CJ, go deep. Go for the 10-point target. Just put an end to this thing. And CJ missed the 10-point target, and that was that.
That I cannot believe that this is where the Pro Bowl is now.
Yes.
Is 1-point targets and Baker Mayfield wins.
Just wait till we get to the flag football tomorrow. But to be slightly more serious on a Texans topic that we are going to do.
You know who has a lot of work ahead of them to fix C.J. Stroud?
Gerard Johnson and Bobby Slowick. And
That's
you know what? They can do it because they are going to be in Houston. And to me, that was the biggest news of the week. And the best news of the week is the fact that Bobby Slowick and Gerard Johnson are running it back with the Texans. And when we got the news earlier on that Ben Johnson was taking himself out of the running for head coaching opportunities, I was basically convinced that Bobby Slowick was a goner. I was pretty set on the fact and resigned to the fact that Bobby Slowick was going to take the job up in Washington to be the next Commanders head coach. They have 49ers people running the front office now. He has a lot of relationships with those people who are running things up in Washington. I just had resigned myself to sort of accept the fact that Bobby Slowick was going to be the Washington Commanders' next head coach. And when it came out that, I think it was late Tuesday afternoon into the evening,
I think so.
that Ian Rappaport said, oh yeah, the last couple of days, Bobby Slowick has agreed to a new and improved contract. I'm like, wait, what do we mean in the last couple of, sorry, it was Albert Breer. He said in the last couple of days, Bobby Slowick has agreed to a new and improved contract. I'm like, so this has just been like laying here for a while?
With who?
And no one's reported this?
Yeah. I mean, it really was such a strange time, because I had been operating under the assumption that one or both of these guys was going to get promoted after the year they had. Either Slowick was going to get a head coaching job and Johnson would bump up to the Texans OC,
yeah.
or that Slowick would stay and Johnson would go be an OC somewhere else. So the fact that they're keeping both of them, mind-blowing. And then when you see who the Washington Commanders hired, also fairly mind-blowing.
Just hilarious. He might be their third or fourth choice, depending on where they had Slowick. So it's great to see. And I honestly believe this might be the most important part of the Texans offense, or off season, keeping both these guys together. Obviously, it's an important part of the offense, but regardless of what they do in free agency and with whatever they do in the draft and whatever trades they happen to make, the continuity of keeping both of these guys around and giving C.J. Stroud a clear platform to build off of in year two, to me, is just so important. And with them back, I think that means expectations should be sky high for CJ next season. There's not going to be a betting in period with the new offense. You are going to get to dive even further into what Bobby Slowick wants this offense to look like. He's going to have the security blanket of Gerard Johnson, who CJ has spoke glowingly about, and what he meant to him in his development, not just as a player, but as a person as well. I am so excited for what this offense could look like with another full year of C.J. Stroud working under both these guys.
Yeah, man. I mean, because Bobby Slowick, he obviously we all thought he was going to be a head coaching candidate, maybe even a head coach next season. And it was after 1 year of being the head play caller for the Texans. And as an NFL coach, he never called plays before this year. So not only are you banking on development from C.J. Stroud working with Bobby Slowick and C.J. Stroud naturally taking a step in his second year, but it's fair to expect that from Bobby Slowick as well as a play caller. It would the drawbacks that the the shortcomings that he had as a play caller. However, it felt like it was 30% of the time.
Yeah, he had some hiccups.
Yeah, 30% of the time you're like, don't love that one from Slowick. But now there's a chance that you would expect that those get ironed out.
Yeah, and you would expect that CJ will be more comfortable with him. He'll be more comfortable with CJ. Not to say that they weren't seemingly on the same page at the end of the year.
Yeah, you work together for 1 year. You're obviously going to be better when you come back after working for a full year. Like you go from zero experience working with each other to 1 calendar year of experience.
And you have to imagine there's some concepts too that Bobby will be like, okay, now that we've had X amount of time working together, I'm even more comfortable rolling this sort of stuff out. And not just what it means on the field, Sean, but to me, what it means off the field too is what does it say about the Texans and what they're building that you've got guys who were candidates to get promotions elsewhere that said, no, you know what? I want to stick it out for at least another season here and see what happens. Because how many times in the past history of this franchise have we been able to say, yeah, you know what? I might pass up on a promotion elsewhere because that's how much I believe in what we are building right here.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it was Jeremy Branham that brought this up earlier this week of when's the last time that a Texans coordinator was a hot commodity in the coaching profession?
That's a great point.
And then to add into that, what you're saying, where not only are these guys hot commodities, but they also want back in. Mike Vrabel, I think, is the only guy who got promoted off of Bill O'Brien's staff.
Yeah, and their defense was worst in the league with J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney coming off the edge.
He didn't get hired because of his play calling acumen, and he's a great coach. Yeah. But I think it does say a lot about the culture, and that goes up to D'Amico Ryans and Nick Caserio of inheriting an absolute mess the last couple of years and moving it into a place. And this is, I guess, would you call it the D'Amico effect that he's had? And it felt like he had immediately. I mean, it's been we just passed the anniversary, the 1 year anniversary of him getting hired, and think about all the changes that have happened in that 1 year and how immediate they were, even before they kicked the ball off to start the season, where the vibes were just through the roof.
The vibes are immaculate right now.
Immaculate.
And you're 100% right that I think a lot of that does start with D'Amico. Obviously, getting the C.J. Stroud pick right changes everything because none of this is possible without C.J. being the dude that he is.
Yes. If Bobby Slowick was working with Davis Mills, A, chances are he's not up for a head coaching job. B, chances are we're not over the moon excited about it.
Shoot, even with Bryce Young, we might have some question marks. But CJ being who he was, it's just all worked so perfectly. And I do feel, too, with these guys coming back, our narrative where we talk about same old Texans should be dead. And I say that for a couple of reasons. Because, one, Cal shelled out the money to make sure that these guys stuck around. And any narrative we have about, the Texans ownership being not good enough in this sense. And look, maybe Cal is a bit of a strange dude, and he's clearly not the most talented guy when you stick a microphone or camera in his face. But I think at this point we can kill off some of these narratives that had been building over the past couple of seasons and everything that had happened with Easterby sort of pulling the strings behind the scenes. We are into a new era of Texans football, and I think it's time that we accept that and kill off some of these old preconceptions and some of these narratives and notions that we have built up about Cal and this franchise and this team over the last few seasons, because it's clear that they're operating in a different way, especially when you look at some of these other franchises across the league and, Ben Johnson was asking for too much money, so we're not going to hire him. He's the number one candidate on your board.
Yeah.
If he's the number one candidate, you go out and pay him. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and there's no cap for how much you can pay a coach. So if you really want him that badly, all that's keeping you from getting him is money. And say what you want about Cal McNair, but he did not allow money to get in the way of bringing back Bobby Slowick. I mean, maybe money wasn't in it. Maybe the Washington Commanders actually just wanted Dan Quinn more than they wanted Bobby Slowick.
I'm sure that's
that's the case.
Especially when they apparently offered contracts to Mike McDonald after getting turned down by Ben Johnson.
Maybe that's the case. But the Gerard Johnson retention is even more a testament of what the Texans have built, not just like we were saying earlier with the immaculate vibes, but also with Cal McNair being able to open up the checkbook and bump up his pay, because he probably could have taken one of these the offensive coordinator jobs that I remember when Paul and I were looking at it last week. All the jobs are terrible. You're gonna be an offensive coordinator who's not calling plays, or you're gonna be in a situation where the coach is immediately on the hot seat.
Yeah. Now, I will say that probably is something that played in the Texans' favor because there weren't any jobs this offseason. Well, I do think the Commanders' opening is still pretty attractive, especially now that Dan Snyder's out of the picture. But
that's how they got such a big name.
Yeah.
That's how they got Dan Quinn.
That's how they got Dan Quinn. But there isn't one of those openings where it's screaming out to you that this is an incredible, incredible job, right? Yeah. And I think that's part of the reason why Vrabel and Belichick are still on the sidelines is because of the fact that there wasn't a job where they were just totally chomping at the bit to go out and get. I would say that maybe with Justin Herbert, the Chargers job was the only one that's just screaming out at you, hey, I have to go pick up this job because there's the ability and the chance to win immediately and win big. Yeah. None of these other jobs to me scream out, hey, this requires my attention because I have the chance to be a playoff / Super Bowl contender in the very immediate future.
Yeah, none of the other. I mean, I thought there's no absolute disaster job other than the Carolina Panthers, I feel like, that were available. I mean, the Patriots were technically open, but they just
went in-house. Yeah.
Like 2 days after Belichick left. So, yeah, there were a whole bunch of, like, jobs, and there's no absolutely knock your socks off one. Even the Chargers one, it's still the Chargers.
It's still the Chargers, exactly.
It's Justin Herbert's doing a lot of the heavy lifting with what the PR on the Chargers job is.
Yeah, but look, all in all, a fantastic start to the offseason for the Texans, and we're going to dive more into what that offseason could look like. There is a potential free agent who was at a Rockets game this past week, and could he be a fit for the Texans? We're going to discuss it next. ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. This is The Bullpen. Andrew Carlson, Sean Mapes.
This is The Bullpen, live from the Veritex Community Bank Studios. Here are the producers of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
That's right. This is The Bullpen, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Andrew Carlson and Sean Mapes with you till 2 o'clock. Our guy John Belmer behind the glass making us sound all fantastic. If you want to join the show, you can do so on the HRMP listener line at 713-780-3776. And before the break, we teased that we're going to get into some Texans free agency discussion and a potential free agent wide receiver homecoming that a lot of Texans fans have been talking about. But we do have a call on that HRMP listener line. So when it's a topic like this that is put up on the call screen, we have to get to it. So Ryan in Deer Park wants to talk about something that Jeremy Branham said yesterday. Ryan, what's up, man?
Hey, sports fellas. So as referenced from Jeremy Branham yesterday, it's not chomping at the bit. It's champing at the bit. What are your thoughts? Thanks, fellas.
Oh man, I didn't even think about that. Champion at the bit.
It is champing at the bit.
It is champion at the bit?
That's the actual term.
That's the
yeah.
actual term?
No, it's not. Really?
Yeah, that's what the actual term is supposed to be. But I mean, chomping makes more. Or chomping is a word that is more widely used when talking about chomping on something, like putting your teeth down on something. But the actual like horse term is champing at the bit.
So is this one of those where it's been misused so frequently that it's almost become the vernacular for a lot of people like myself, where I just misused it right there?
Irregardless of what people say, it is now means something else.
Well done. I appreciate you pulling out the irregardless there.
Yeah,
another myth. Yeah,
yeah.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah, I'm ready to teach a 9th grade English class right now with some of this stuff.
Do I need to toss you my AP style book from college?
Exactly. This useless information I have.
Wow. Look, you learn something every day. I didn't expect to learn something on the bullpen today, but here you go.
Yeah, that's what champing at the bit is. One of those things that I intuitively know that it's supposed to be champing the bit, but I'm not going to change the way I talk. And like, if it comes out of my mouth chomping, I'm going to say chomping.
It sounds wrong. Champing at the bit. It doesn't sound right.
I'm looking it up now, and yeah, Ryan's 100% right. Brandon's 100% right.
I'm not changing.
Well, you'll just keep being wrong, John. Nothing new for you, though.
Hey, that's your right as an American to speak English incorrectly.
I mean, look, that's what we do better than anything else, if we're being honest.
Damn straight.
All right, Texans free agency, guys. Jonathan Alexander of the Houston Chronicle had an interesting piece on one Mike Evans on Friday. So obviously there's been a little bit of waves being made by Mike Evans. He was at the Rockets game earlier this week, and obviously wide receiver has been sort of bandied about as a big need for the Texans. There's some debate over whether it is truly a top-of-the-list need for the Texans this offseason, but I think that there's been a lot of discussion, especially before we saw Nico Collins become what he became, where the Texans need to go out and get C.J. Stroud, a wide receiver once. Now, in this article, Jonathan Alexander discussed just what Mike Evans is expected to earn based upon wide receiver contracts currently and what he's hearing from people in the league. And he cited sources saying that Evans is going to get $25 to $30 million per year. Now, when I read that, I was immediately like, oh, he ain't coming here.
And for that reason, I am out.
Yeah, I just, as much as I would love to see Mike Evans in a Texans uniform, I'm not sure that you can justify paying him $25 million per year. And even if it is the low end of that, and it is $25 million, and maybe you can get him on a slight hometown discount because he wants to come back and there's no state income tax, so you can get it down to what, $22-23 million?
Yes. There's no state income tax in Florida where Tampa
is. So you're probably not getting a leg up on the Bucs if he wants to stay there. The question is, does he believe that he can truly contend for another Super Bowl there? Is he there are a lot of factors that we just don't know the answer to. But once I saw that number, I immediately said, I think that there's zero chance that Mike Evans is coming to the Texans, unless by some miracle you can get him on a one-year deal like what you got with D-Hop, which I just don't see any universe where that's possible.
No.
Mike Evans is not going to be a Houston Texan.
No, it is hard to believe that $25 to $30 million would put him like fifth. Like 25 would put him fifth in highest paid wide receivers. This year. And listen, Mike Evans is awesome. He should be a Hall of Famer. He's
going to be a Hall of Famer. He's going to be a first ballot guy.
Bulletproof Hall of Fame case, but paying him top of the line wide receiver money, especially with the team that, as you mentioned, how wide receiver is viewed as a glaring need for the Texans. I kind of disagree, or I disagree with the fact that they need a number one receiver.
That's where I'm at as well now too, is coming into the season, I totally understand why anyone would have said the Texans need to go out and get C.J. Stroud a wide receiver one. Nico Collins is your wide receiver one.
Yeah.
And
he's going to get paid like it.
Yeah, and I would hope that they extend him this offseason. I would hope that any money they would have spent or would have budgeted toward, or some of the money they would have budgeted towards that planned wide receiver one acquisition a year ago, now can be spent saying, hey, we're going to extend Nico, because the relationship that he's got with C.J. Stroud and how it blossomed and was built over this past season, that is something that I don't think you can afford to mess with. That is something that you absolutely need to keep him locked in. So, yeah, let's extend Nico with wide receiver 1 money and get him a nice new extension for anything that's in the range of 20 to 23 million. Because in the comments of this article from Jonathan Alexander, some people asked, hey, what do you think it's going to take to extend Nico? And he said his belief from what he's heard and sort of just estimating based upon what we see in the league now, 20 to 23 million. And if you can get Nico locked up long-term on a 5-year deal, let's say 5 years, 110 million, I'm in on that right now.
Yes. Yeah. Because I think Nico Collins has shown when you give him CJ Stroud, and whether it is CJ Stroud makes Nico Collins good or that Nico Collins finally gets to show how good he is now that he has a quarterback not named Davis Mills or Kyle Allen throwing him the ball. Either
Don't
way,
forget Jeff Driscoll. The Driscoll cat, baby.
See, I think of him more as a runner with the Driscoll cat than a thrower. But I do think that Nico Collins is worth it given what he has shown this year. And if you're going to pay Nico Collins that, like, you cannot pay 2 wide receivers $45 or $50 million a year. Like, that's just untenable as a team building strategy. I mean, I know this is an extreme case and maybe not exactly, one-to-one, apples to apples, but the Kansas City Chiefs had just made it to back-to-back Super Bowls after trading away Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting points as to how the Texans are going to treat this offseason, because there are a few different avenues and sort of blueprints that they can take, and the Kansas City Chiefs are one of them. Now, I don't think they're quite there yet because they don't have to pay CJ. So because of that, it affords you the luxury of saying, yeah, we can still have a undoubted wide receiver 1 on this team. Mm-hmm. But the Kansas City Chiefs have basically said, hey, Mahomes, you are incredibly special. We're going to have your wide receiver 1 in Travis Kelce, and you're basically just going to have to figure it out after that. And it would not shock me if that's the route the Texans end up going down. And they don't necessarily have to go down it this season, and they don't, because they've got Tank Dell, who was almost a 1B to Nico's 1A in the middle of the season.
Yes, and that is the difference between the Chiefs and the Texans wide receiver core this year, is that you probably would take Nico Collins and Tank Dell over any of the wide receivers on the Chiefs. Obviously, Travis Kelce.
I would take Nico over Travis Kelce.
Oof.
I would.
Huh.
Because of age?
No, I mean, well, yes, age is part of it.
I'm just saying on the field, like playing a game today.
Yeah, based upon what they did this season, I would take Nico Collins over Travis Kelce.
That is fair, because this regular season, Travis Kelce was on big washed watch and on did Taylor Swift ruin one of the greatest tight ends in NFL history. Now, his last 3 playoff games have been insane.
He summoned old Travis Kelce back for the playoffs.
And I think a lot of Kelce's production comes, and this is not a knock on him at all, it comes from the absolute mind meld that he has with Patrick Mahomes. The fact that these two guys are always 100% on the same page of what the right play is, and obviously Mahomes can make a lot of plays right even when they're wrong. So I still would take Travis Kelce over Nico Collins, but I get what you're saying, and the point that I was trying to make was that I'm not saying go full on sign 5 MVSs and Kadarius Tonys. I'm saying that you don't need to spend $50 million so you have Nico Collins and Mike Evans.
No one needs 5 Kadarius Tonys.
Kadarius Toney doesn't need more Kadarius Tonys. But I do think that I'm not. They do need to bring in wide receiver help.
Yeah,
they do need to bring in depth at that position and quality depth at that position. I just don't think that signing the number 1 ranked wide receiver on whatever free agent tracker you're looking at is necessarily the way to go.
And that's where I was going with it next is, okay, if Mike Evans or T. Higgins, who I think now is going to be franchise tagged up in Cincinnati, if signing one of those marquee guys at the position isn't what you do, then taking a step down, if you're looking at a Calvin Ridley, a Hollywood Brown, a Gabe Davis, all of those names as a wide receiver 3 are extremely, extremely intriguing to me, especially a guy like Hollywood Brown who has the speed to stretch the field. Because, look, as much as I appreciate what Robert Woods, Xavier Hutchinson, John Mechie, and crew did, you need a massive upgrade at the wide receiver 3 spot. Yeah. Because right now it was Nico, Tank, occasionally Dalton Schultz, and then basically nothing from the pass
Yes,
catchers.
yeah, and then C.J. Stroud throwing to like, like you said, you said their names. I don't know why I was going to be mean to them. But
What were you about to call them, Sean?
I don't know. I was between a lot of things. I was going to call them the Washington Generals. I was going to call them the Pips. I was going to just call them the others. Those are the three. But yes, I do think that building up that slot is the way to go, as opposed to building on top of, like, getting someone over the top of Nico Collins and Tank Dell in the hierarchy.
Is there still an option there, a shot for John Mechie to become that third guy?
I don't think so. I think that we would have seen more from him this past season. And if it happens, John, I would love that. It would be one of the most incredible stories we've seen in the NFL for John Mechie to have the comeback from leukemia to becoming a legit NFL wide receiver. But I just don't think that his body is up for it anymore. And it seems like the time that he lost from football due to cancer has taken a serious toll on him. And that's totally understandable, totally reasonable. And I don't fault him at all for that. This was something that was far out of anybody's control. And it's just a really unfortunate circumstance all around that it happens. I would love to see him become a legit contributor for this team. I just don't foresee a realistic way that it happens. But look, I would love for this to be a freezing cold take a year from now.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what the Texans do outside of wide receiver, assuming that they don't go big. And part of the reason why I don't think they can go big either is just because of the fact that they have so many other I don't want to call them holes, but maybe issues on the roster that need to be plastered over, right?
Yes,
that need to be smoothed out.
Yes, there's a couple marks on the walls that you can paint over that.
Yeah, so there are some other discussions that we'll get into in the weeks to come. What do they do with Jonathan Grenard? Because our own Lance Zierlein thinks that he's going to command too much money to stick around. And
Lance Zierlein saying, beat it, Jonathan Grenard. Get out of here.
Basically.
Not in my city. That's what Lance Zierlein
he said, look, injury issues in college.
I'll pack his bags for him.
Injury issues in the pros. And he's going to command over $20 million plus per year. And you would expect Will Anderson to take a massive step forward. And you don't often have teams that have two premier pass rushers on both sides. So
yeah, the case for keeping Grenard or for re-signing Grenard would be that, I mean, like we're saying with C.J. Stroud being on his rookie scale deal, so is Will Anderson. And so the fact that you compare those guys together, you compare Will Anderson with a high-priced pass rusher for the next few years, would be the case for it. But
if he can stay healthy.
Yes, if he can stay healthy is always the thing.
So a lot of interesting Texans discussion to come as the offseason rolls on. We'll see what moves they make. But speaking of moves that have been made, the Rockets made a trade for a center this past week.
Whoa.
Steven Adams. He is a Houston Rocket. We're going to discuss that trade and what could be next as the Rockets look to jumpstart their rebuild. That's coming up next on the Bullpen, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
Broadcasting live from the Veritex Community Bank Studios, it's The Bullpen, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
You heard it from Spencer himself right there. This is The Bullpen with you till 2 o'clock, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Andrew Carlson and Sean Mapes with our guy John Belmer behind the glass. If you want to get in on any of the action we have today, it's very easy. Give us a call. HRP listener line, 713-780-3776. Hit us up on Twitter. I'm at Carlson Radio. Sean's at Sean A. Mapes. And John is at Third Coast Johnny. You might be wondering why Brian McDonald is not here. Well, you know, we'll take your best reasons as to why BMAC is not here. Wrong answers only. HRP listener line, Twitter. We might even have to open up the text line for that one. I'm not sure if I can access it, but I can try
if I can do it.
But I can try. Yeah, but we wish BMAC all the best as he is recovering from WrestleMania last weekend. That's going to be my reason. He is still so inundated with wrestling storylines and content that he could not bring himself to come into the show today because there's just his mind was just so blown by whatever happens.
His mind and body. It is a physical toll watching. It also is the Royal Rumble.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Weekend.
Royal Rumble, WrestleMania. It all blends together for me.
It's all the same, Andrew.
I'm not a booger eater, so I couldn't tell you.
Sports Entertainment Sean had to come in and set it straight of what happened. But yes, I do think that Royal Rumble took a lot out of Brian McDonald. We wish him the best.
So does your name Sean SEAN stand for Sports Entertainment and News? I'm just curious. Since you're Sports Entertainment, Sean, it can.
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
I never thought about it like that.
Thanks, John. I appreciate your backup.
No problem.
I felt like I had to be a good teammate there, John. Thank you for speaking for the audience.
Well, you know what? That's why I don't crack jokes. So I'm going to refrain from doing that for the rest of the show.
I mean, I'm still laughing, but,
Sometimes things are so bad that they're good, but that wasn't quite bad enough to reach that level. So it was just kind of crap instead. What hopefully won't be crap, as I make a phenomenal transition from that, is Steven Adams when he plays for the Rockets next season. They acquired him for Victor Oladipo and 3 second-round picks from the Memphis Grizzlies earlier this week. Now, obviously, the fact that he can't play sucks because that means we still have to see Jock Landale take the court. And anytime that I see Jock Landale or Jeff Green getting bodied by whatever center is on the other team, it just a little part of me dies inside. But I'm very excited for this. I think that this gives the Rockets the legit backup big that they have really been craving and we're hoping that they were getting in Jock. And I think that assuming he's going to be healthy and be the Steven Adams that we've seen in the past, now obviously that is a question mark considering he hasn't played since January 2023, is recovering from right knee surgery. And when you're a big man, you never really know how the body's going to respond to those sort of things. But assuming he comes back and is Steven Adams, I love this move for what the Rockets are going to look like next season. And I also love what it means and what it says about how they're not, despite reports in this Athletic article that we're going to get to later on in the segment, it doesn't seem like they're just solely focused and bought in on we have to win now this season.
Yeah, I do think to talk about it on the court, which is a very funny thing to say about this trade, the on the court implications, because
we're not going to see it.
Two guys that don't play got traded for each other. 2 guys that are hurt for the year got traded for each other. But yes, I do think if you look at this year's team and just plop even to diminish Steven Adams on it, which I think is fair to expect for next year, that he's going to be a relatively diminished version of the same player that he was. That is still such a need for this team going forward. And like you said, it does speak to the patience that they're willing to show, which is, again, I mean, they're making a move for next year.
Exactly.
It's not like this is the process here, but they are making a move for next year as opposed to this year, because a lot of the reporting that came out was that Ime Udoka wants to make the playoffs this year. And then obviously the first trade that they make after that report comes out is a trade for next year.
Yeah.
So that is also a good thing. This trade really also maybe the second biggest thing after the, 10, 20 minutes a game that Steven Adams is going to play for this team next year is basically that they are rolling over the salary slot that originally was Kevin Porter Jr., then was Victor Oladipo, now is Steven Adams. Oladipo was an expiring contract this year. Adams has one more year after this year on the contract. So they are kind of keeping that powder dry for maybe it's a bigger trade in the offseason. Maybe it is they want to see what Adams has next season. Maybe it's a trade at next year's deadline. But that is kind of what Steven Adams is bringing to the team. He's bringing a guy who's really good in the pick and roll as a screener, which will be huge for Amon Thompson and for Jaylen Green.
One of the best rebounders in the league.
One of the best rebounders in the league. But then secondary to that, it is a contract that is very tradable. It is a contract that keeps a lot of options open for the Rockets.
Yeah, and that's part of why it's – and I think Rafael Stone deserves some credit here. It's part of why you have to be excited about what the Rockets are planning on doing with whatever it is that happens this offseason. And look, there's still a chance they make the play, and so I don't want to look too far ahead. But with the Steven Adams trade, it's hard not to because they have set themselves up from a contract perspective exceptionally well to make more big moves if they want to. And look, there are some that I would prefer more than others. The rumors that we're hearing about the Mikal Bridges trade, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of because to me, he's not the ceiling raiser that you would want if you were trading away the sort of capital that you would be with those Brooklyn picks. I think that Mikal Bridges is a phenomenal player, a borderline all-star, and the prototype 3-and-D wing that everybody covets and wants in this league. That being said, he is not someone who is going to single-handedly go out and will you to wins or to the playoffs. And I would be expecting if the Rockets are in the market to trade away some of those Brooklyn picks and one of these guys on their team, maybe a Fred VanVleet next offseason, someone like that, in a salary matching capacity for a superstar, that you would be getting someone who is more of a ceiling raiser than Mikal Bridges is. But that being said, I'm extremely excited by everything that they're doing right now from a behind-the-scenes perspective. And when that article dropped in The Athletic with Kelly Iko and Shams, I was legitimately concerned when I was reading it, Sean, because there was part of me that was really worried that Ime Udoka was too insistent on winning now, and they were going to lop off some of the upside potential for what this rebuild could be in order to fast-track things to win more now. And the fact that that doesn't appear to be the case makes me very, very excited. And look, it still could be. Maybe they end up trading a bunch of the Brooklyn picks and acquire Mikal Bridges, and I look like a fool for saying this. But I don't believe that they're going to do anything that is short-sighted enough to where it takes away from what this rebuild could eventually become.
Yes, I think that when you see that Ime Udoka is pushing for win-now moves, trying to make the playoffs this season, trying to make moves to make the playoffs this season, it's natural for any fan to be like, oh my God, what are we doing? Because that is when things go wrong, when coaches have GM powers. And
that's how you become the Chicago Bulls.
Yes, and obviously Ime Udoka doesn't have actual GM powers like in writing, but it's very clear that he has a large say of who is on this team and who's not. And so that's when things go wrong, is when you're too short-sighted, too win now, which a lot of coaches are because obviously they're competitive people. They have to stay on the sideline and try to win games. So
it's kind of their job.
Yeah, it's natural for them to be like, you know what? I don't want to stand on the sideline and lose games. I want to win them. Give me some winners here. So I am a little I understand the concern of oh my God, they're gonna make they're gonna trade for Jeremy Grant or something. Like they're gonna make a move that would be a player that'd be very good on a team that already has superstars on them that are ready to contend right now, which is not where the Rockets are at this moment. We all love Alperen Sengun. We love what we've seen from Jaylen Green. We'll get to more on that later. We have a lot of high hopes for a lot of these high picks this last couple years.
Cam Whitmore's looked amazing.
Love Cam Whitmore. But they are not in the position to where they need reinforcements to make the play-in this year. That I still think the right move is to roll it over with the young guys. Maybe they can make some trades to, like you're saying, Jock Landale makes you
die inside,
physically ill, as sick as Josh Beard every time you see him, or I guess as sick as Brian McDonald every time you see him. They can make moves around the edges to shore up the spots like that. Maybe a little less Aaron Holiday.
Would not be a bad thing. Yeah.
I wouldn't say no to less Aaron Holiday minutes. So those are the type of moves that they can make that I think would have a big effect on their chances to win this season. They're just obviously you're not trading Jaylen Green, you're not trading Jabari Smith, you're not trading Tari Eason to make those moves.
So that being said, do you think that they will make one of the moves, or do you think this trade for Steven Adams is the end of the business they do before the trade deadline?
I think they can make a move for
like one of the fringe guys.
Yeah, like a 6-man kind of type or a backup big type that are very very low level, very cheap moves. A lot of moves about like I was saying the financial implications of the Steven Adams move. A lot of moves that are also kind of financially as financially motivated as they are basketball motivated.
I mean, because with Tari hopefully coming back in a few days, I think his projected return date is February 6th. Yeah. With him coming back soon, with Cam showing what he's shown, with Amen Thompson seemingly growing as every single game passes by, you would have to think if the Rockets are making a move for somebody, it can be like a 7th or 8th man on a roster, and it would still be incredibly beneficial to this team if all of a sudden, like you mentioned, we're chopping off Aaron Holiday's minutes, or Jock Landale doesn't see time anymore, or Jeff Green isn't having to play, 38 minutes a night.
What they need is someone to play the amount of minutes that Jeff Green is currently playing, and then have Jeff Green play the amount of minutes that Jock Landale is currently playing. That's what they need. That is the move that Ime Udoka, if you're listening, that is the move that will win you a lot of games and get you right in the thick of the 10 seed race, which, I mean, they are technically tied with the Utah Jazz. They're out on the tiebreaker, so they are the 11th seed. But if it ended today, they're on the outside looking in, but very close.
They'll get there.
With
your advice.
Yes.
Powering Ime Udoka. Ime, I hope you're listening, because Sean has
Trade
the blueprint.
Trade for Kelly Olynyk if you want to make the playoffs. Win now, move.
He's Sean Mapes. I'm Andrew Carlson. This is the Bullpen, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. When we come back, the Rockets conversation continues. They had a phenomenal win over at the Toyota Center last night, just beating those boys down from up north in the Toronto Raptors. We're going to discuss it next and some of the implications it had for the star performers and their development. That's all next on the Bullpen, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
Live from the Veritex Community Bank Studios, you're back inside the Bullpen with the producers from ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Wait, who let those guys up here? Security! That's them right there. Right there.
Security was only able to grab Brian McDonald. Yeah. Sean A. Mapes and I are still here.
It's the classic saying, you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be, faster than your friend?
Something like that, yeah.
Hey, that's the saying.
I don't know if that's quite how it goes, but
it's the same. I'm saying that's.
I get the idea.
We didn't have to outrun security. We had to outrun Brian McDonald, and we both did so easily.
And that's why he's not here. Security dragged him away. They've dragged him away every segment, and in fact, so not quite sure how or why that works the way it does, but Sean and I are with you till 2 o'clock here on the Bullpen, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. So the conversation with the Rockets is going to roll on here. If you want to jump in and make a comment or ask us a question or talk about anything we have to say, you can do so on the HRMP listener line, 713-780-3776. But last night, Sean, the Rockets they've had a few impressive wins this season. I'm not going to go out there and say, oh, it's the win of the year or anything like that, because the Toronto Raptors absolutely suck. But it was one of their better wins this season. They took care of business, which is not something that they have been doing relatively consistently over the past, 20 or 30 games. At the start of the season, I had a relative level of confidence that the Rockets were going to be able to beat bad teams. More recently, that has not been the case. Last night, they just blew the doors off the Raptors, and it was great to see.
Yeah, it's a game that you look at, and it's not a must-win for any reason other than, boy,
the Raptors suck.
They suck, and you need a get-right game, and that's what the Rockets did. They came in, and immediately it was not a game.
Yeah, and there are so many storylines to really pull at here to start off with, but I think I'm going to lead with Cam Whitmore because he is an incredibly, incredibly fun basketball player to watch. Now, don't get me wrong. He's absolutely hilarious because the meme that everyone has with Michael Porter Jr., like Michael, the rock stops here, Porter Jr., that is Cam Whitmore.
Cam Whitmore is, you want me to pass you the ball, get the offensive rebound.
Yeah.
That's
hit the glass. You want the ball,
Whitmore.
hit the glass is basically Cam Whitmore. But
one assist for Cam last night, and it was on a fast break. And
it was a great assist.
He threw it behind the back pass.
It was incredible. Like, he is a player that just makes no sense to me. Oh, he makes all the sense in the world to me.
I
take
him
it back.
100% figured out. What are you talking about?
But he makes 100% sense to me. But it is just like hilarious to watch because you can see when he gets the ball, there is one thing and one thing on his mind only. Shot is going up.
Yeah, I mean it's something. I mean, we can all appreciate someone who's so themselves, so not afraid to be themselves, and so also sure of themselves when, maybe you don't need to throw the ball back at LeBron James that hard when you're after you score. Maybe you don't need to score, 8 points in like 37 seconds or whatever it was. But he's doing it, and hats off to him. He's absolutely balling right now.
He has raised any expectations I had for him by such a vast margin because when the Rockets take a punt on him with where they did in the draft in the 20s, like when you draft somebody there, I understand that there was some discussion that he could have been the pick at 4.
Yes. That is, he was a consensus like top 5 prospect heading into the draft, and he slid because of fairly nebulous reasons that we never really got the answers on. It was, some teams didn't like how he interviewed. Apparently he had bad medicals. I don't know what happened, but he ended up getting picked 15 spots lower than he should have been. Yeah,
and the rest of the league's loss is the Rockets' gain because any concerns that people had about his game translating to the NBA clearly have just fallen by the wayside. And I understand that he will probably never be a prolific passer, and that's okay. Who he was in college, I don't know if you've seen this, Sean, but for a player who had a usage rate as high as his was in college, I believe it was 25% was the threshold. So anyone with a 25% or higher usage rate in college, he had the lowest assist rate in college basketball history. All time. All time. Cam Whitmore passed less than basically any player in college basketball history.
Not only so that's pass percentage, usage rate. That's a lot lot of sabermetrics you're throwing at me. A lot of analytics you're throwing at me. Let me just
Sean's like, I speak buckets, okay?
Well, I also speak the box score assist column. Let me just go backwards a while. So last night, 1 assist. 0 0 1 2 0 0 1 0 1 0 0 1 0 0 0 1 0. That's goes all the way back to New Year.
Basically, since he's become a rotational player for the team, that's
He's
incredible.
He's like 10 assists in 2024.
I mean, like 0.4 a game. That's a decent rate for a guard, right?
Sure.
But
what's his per 36?
Under 1. I genuinely believe his per 36 is under 1, which is just, it is mind-numbing that there is a guard in the NBA in this day and age. But look, it works for him. And if he can continue to score the rock the way that he has, as efficiently as he has as well, like, nobody's going to care if he doesn't pass the ball.
That's the thing. You're only a chucker if you don't make the shots. Like, if you don't pass and you score a lot efficiently, you are just a good scorer.
Exactly.
It's when you don't score efficiently, you become a chucker. And right now, Cam Whitmore is 100% a good scorer. He is not a chucker.
And I believe now that he and Kobe Bryant are the only teenagers in NBA history, right?
17 plus off the bench for
5 straight games. I mean, look, that's a wildly specific and cherry-picked stat. The only teenager with 17 or more points off the bench in 5 straight games.
You just think about it, you're like, well, there's not that many teenagers that play. There's not that many teenagers that play a lot. And if they play a lot, they're probably on bad teams, so they start, not come off the bench. It's like very narrowed down. But hey, anytime you can have a picture of you next to Kobe Bryant,
you take it.
The only 2 people in basketball to ever do this, yeah, pretty good.
Pretty decent company. And as we look into the rest of the star performers from the Rockets game last night, Alpi had another phenomenal game. And we're going to get into this a little bit more next segment when we talk about Jaylen Green and the ascension that he's had over the past couple of weeks. But Amen Thompson, man, I will say this. When they drafted him, I felt that his floor was relatively high because of his athleticism and his feel for the game. He would always have a place on the court. Yeah. And anyone who's got, and I think the way that he's defended has made that clear, that at minimum, he is going to be an impactful player because of his feel for the game. He cuts exceptionally well to the basket. There are a lot of things that need ironing out. His handle is one of them. The shot, obviously. But when you can rebound, pass the ball, and defend the way that he does, you are always going to have a place in the NBA. But, man, I think we got a glimpse of what he can be last night. And if he ever figures that shot, and I don't expect him to ever be a knockdown shooter, but if he can be a Rajon Rondo type player for the Rockets, and he's still got a ways to go with his handle before he can get there. But there are some other aspects of his game that make me think if this is a supersized Rondo, you're going to have a world of fun with this guy at the point.
Yeah, and I mean, the way you brought up his cutting, and that to me, just speaks to his basketball IQ.
Yeah, his acumen for the game is off the
walk
charts.
in as a rookie, not really play that much the first couple months of the season, and then when you're finally getting some tick, you have that level of chemistry and that level of knowledge with Alperen Sengun, and that's ultimately where it all kind of trickles down from, and that's how you have to kind of start thinking about things if you're the Rockets or if you're a Rockets fan, is how these guys fit with Sengun. And it's really interesting that all the archetype that seems to work with Sengun so far this season. It's still very early in all these guys' career, but what it looks like works best is the Tari Eason type, the Amen Thompson type, whereas point of attack defenders that are long, very athletic, and that can cut and attack the rim. And that is because that really unlocks the passing that Sengun has, because you don't need to be a great passer to when you get doubled on the block to throw to a wide open corner 3. That is good passing, but that doesn't fully capture all that Sengun can do, and the creativity and the angles that he can see really get unlocked when you have guys like Amen Thompson running off the ball with him, and that's why he can be an effective scorer. He scored 25 points or 19 points last night in an NBA game. You don't do that without being able to have an effective offensive game, and right now his effective offensive game is how he can get himself open going towards the rim.
Yeah, and ideally that shot would come along at some point.
Yes.
Whether it's this season or in the next couple of seasons, because look, if he's able to figure that piece out, like I said, he is going to be a superstar in this league. But it was just so exciting to watch that the Rockets rookies, we knew that the draft class was good, and I don't think that there was any real debate about that, especially here in Houston. But to see them both drop career highs last night, it was another reminder of how bright the future is, man.
Yeah, exactly. That's what this year is that the last 3 years, or last 2 years, I guess, they had talent on the team. They had young talent on the team, and you would get games where you would see, the flashes of it. But now it happens in a healthy NBA ecosystem of an offense where you're like, this, not only can you see the flashes of it, I can see it how it would work today. Mm-hmm. I see how it's helping them win right now. And that to me is just where this team is at, like on another level than where they've been in the past, where it seems like it's very, I don't know, it's good calories of NBA offense. It's not bad calories like they were doing earlier.
And if we're speaking of flashes, there's someone over the past couple of weeks that has shown flashes unlike any other. This might have been the best 2-week stretch of Jaylen Green's NBA career. I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that at all. We're going to discuss his ascension, what it means for a potential trade of Jaylen Green, whether or not you want to keep him here, how he fits in the Rockets' future plans given some of the stuff that he's shown. And that's all coming up next on the Bullpen as we lead into Hour 2 on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
This is The Bullpen, live from the Veritex Community Bank Studios. Here are the producers of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
John, I appreciate what you were trying to do there. This is The Bullpen, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. To any of the more astute listeners out there, our guy John Belmer behind the glass was trying to wait for the come with it now to hit as he played the rejoin, but
They moved it. It's moved in the rejoin.
You know what? We'll just have to move it back next week. We'll have to work on that. We'll get our crack production team.
Nobody's spending effort on that.
Michael Carroll, if we asked him really nicely, might.
Yeah. He's not busy or anything.
Yeah, it's not like Michael Carroll has anything else to do.
He's at our beck and call at all times.
It's not like he's up here till 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. every day just slaving away to make the station sound good.
Hey, be here until 7:30 one day and work on this.
Yeah. This is the Bullpen, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. That voice you hear to my left, well, I guess you wouldn't hear it to my left, but he is to my left. That's Sean Mapes. I am Andrew Carlson. Our guy John Belmer is behind the glass. We're just having a right old good time here till 2 o'clock. The Rockets discussion has been strong the last couple of segments, and it will continue here. If you want to get in on anything we have to say, you can do so on Twitter. I'm at Carlson Radio. Sean is at Sean A. Mapes. Guy John at Third Coast Johnny. I almost called you Johnny Two Jobs. I'm sorry, John.
Hey, that's a throwback. I'll take it.
Yeah, it's a throwback to the Wheelhouse days, RIP. Pour one out for the boys. But like I said, the Rockets conversation here is going to continue. And one of the, I don't want to say bad things about Rockets discussion over the course of the season, but I'm going to say that it's a annoying thing, is that it very often just tends to end up being a Jaylen Green discussion, right, Sean? Is like eventually at some point it just sort of meanders its way into discussing Jaylen Green for 5 or 6 minutes, and it became rather annoying because those conversations were nauseatingly negative for an extensive portion of the season. It just, okay, we talked about Rockets for 5 minutes, and now let's bash on Jaylen Green for the remainder of this segment.
Yeah, it was a situation where the most interesting part about the team was what was happening with Jaylen Green, and if you're Jaylen Green, it was not a good discussion to have because there wasn't a lot of good things to say. I mean, there weren't many positives. It's not like people were being negative for no reason. They're negative because of how he was playing, but obviously he is now playing a little bit better. Now the conversation gets a little bit more interesting with the Rockets and with Jaylen Green specifically.
Yeah, and I'll say this. It doesn't help Jaylen Green when his draft mate in Alperen Şengün is having the season that he is having and is seemingly taking the leap that he is.
I mean, that's part of the reason that he was the focal point of a lot of conversation is that Şengün, I mean, there's not much you can say about like, man, Şengün's awesome. Not every single night, but 9 out of 10 nights, Şengün is playing his out of his mind. And then
Jaylen Green's just been dropping stinkers for like 90% of the season.
Like, he got benched halfway through the third quarter. That's not good.
Yeah. But look, this past couple of weeks, it has been the best that I think Jaylen has looked in his NBA career. I don't think it's me being exaggerating things or overstating it. Jaylen Green, look, he wasn't great last night, 7 of 14, didn't get to the line, didn't make a three, so 7 of 14 for 14 points. But who he has been over the past couple of weeks has been sensational. It has been everything that you wanted to see from him in terms of him and his development as the second-round pick. And I would say the best part of it is that it seems to be sustainable. Nothing that he was doing screamed out to me, this is a hot streak that Jaylen Green can't continue, because it's not like he was consistently making extremely difficult three-pointers, mid-range shots. What he was doing was he was getting to the line, he was getting to the bucket, and he was doing stuff that you would expect someone with his athletic profile to be capable of doing. And he was also changing up his pace in the game, too. And that's something that I've been super critical of him. And a lot of Rockets fans have been critical of Jaylen Green in this aspect, in that he always seems to play at one pace. He doesn't seem to have the ability to slow things down and then speed up, or speed up and slow. It was always just go, go, go all the time. And maybe he's taking a leap. I really hope that that's the case. I'm not going to sit here and say that Jaylen Green has 100% turned a corner and this is a difference, but he has looked like a different player the last couple of weeks ever since that game against who was it? It was against the Portland Trailblazers that started this run off, where he was 12 of 24 from the field, scored 29 points in a loss. And that was the first time in this stretch where it was like, okay, he is looking a little bit different. He's playing the game of basketball a little bit differently, and he's just continued from there. And a lot of it, too, isn't just what he's done in terms of his scoring. It's also been his impact on the other things as well. He's handling the ball better. He's attacking the glass in a different manner.
That to me is the crazy part, is that before the game against the Charlotte Hornets last week, I don't think he had ever had double-digit rebounds in a game. And then he went out and he did it for 3 straight games.
Yeah.
Pulling down double-digit rebounds. So that to me is where you see the not just the effort in what you're saying, the attacking the rim, the going full speed at the rim, and now learning how to vary his attack a little bit. It's also just a holistic, more effort everywhere. And a lot of times that can show up in the rebounding stats, just show up in who's trying to get rebounds.
Yeah.
And Jaylen Green, obviously, something clicked, something changed, and he obviously was making more of an effort on the defensive glass.
And it's interesting, too, because as this sort of resurgence for Jaylen was happening, his name started to pop up in trade discussions a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Is this like trade market Jaylen Green? Is this trade rumor Jaylen Green? If so, he needs to be in trade rumors for the rest of his Rockets career. But like in the Athletic article that we alluded to or that mentioned earlier from Kelly Iko and Shams Charania, if you read between the lines in that article, they basically say Jaylen Green is the only one of the core 6 that they would really consider trading right now. Like Şengün is untouchable. They're not trading
The rookies.
Cam or Amen.
Yeah.
And they don't want to part ways with Tari or Jabari. So that the only person not mentioned there,
Jock Landale.
well, I think he could always be had for the right price. But-
Extremely touchable in the eyes of Andrew Carlson.
I don't know if that's a phrase that anyone ever wants to have attached to them. Extremely touchable. But
no.
but Jaylen Green, if you look at that and read between the lines, he was the only member of the core 6 that's not mentioned when the team talks about people who they wouldn't be willing to part ways with. And this stretch has sort of reminded me because I'll be honest with you, Sean. I'll be honest with you, John. Like,
Please.
I am someone who was getting very tired of Jaylen Green before this stretch to the point where I was basically out on the Jaylen Green experiment in Houston. I was fully on board with saying, hey, if you can make him a package for a star, I am fully okay with that being the case. And I think I'm still there, but I'm now, after this stretch, much more hesitant because it reminds you how young he is and how vast his potential still is.
Yeah, that was always the thing when we would have discussions about the Rockets. That was in some way ranking the core 6, the 6 young guys on this team. And that's what always made Jaylen Green so hard to rank because as far as production out on the court, he was probably last or second to last to whichever, either Eamon or Cam, who wasn't playing. And then when you try to factor in potential, though, he's right up there with Şengün.
He's right up at the top.
As far as all-star potential, like a guy you can see making several all-star teams. We all love Tari Eason, but Tari Eason's not going to make an all-star team.
Yeah, he's a great glue guy.
Yeah, a fantastic glue guy, but that's just not what gets rewarded in that way. So that's why Jaylen was always kind of like a tough piece to gauge on, at least for me, because I guess I was more patient, not more patient, just less out on Jaylen Green. I was kind of resigned to this is not going well whatsoever, but I was always in the camp of give him the rest of the season. And then that's when worst comes to worst, that's when you can make the move. Just because to foreclose on the way he can produce in a Ime Udoka offense, to only give him 25, 30 games of that before being like, see you later, pal. That seemed a little too abrupt to me, and I still do think that I would be. I think now I'm neutral on trading him at the deadline. Like I don't actually think it's a good thing, but if it's the right deal, you should make it. But I now am. It's just nice to see that. Okay, this is what
there's
it looks
something
like.
here.
This is what
exactly.
It looks like. He's not going to just stink it up for 82 straight games. Like he can still be a productive basketball player when you're asking him to play winning basketball, which is what is being asked of him for the first time since high school for him.
Yeah, and I will say this too. Even in the scenario that he is traded at some point, when you see a stretch like this, all of a sudden it gives a team that's watching the ability to look and say, okay, there's some talent here. Because if the Rockets were trying to offload him and his season basically looks like what it had for the entire year up until this stretch, you would not have been able to get very much for Jaylen Green. All of a sudden, you see these flashes of potential, and then a potential suitor might look at him and say, oh, you know what, we'll be willing to take a punt on that because we believe that there is some latent talent in there that that is still untapped. And for me, the only real question I have now is not just can he do it consistently, but can he and Alper and Şengün consistently have good games together? Because for the most part, it seems like when one has a solid game, the other one is somewhat off. And I think that their games can coexist relatively well. It doesn't.
There's no reason.
There's no reason they can't, and I believe it's just happenstance that it hasn't occurred yet.
So some of it, and again, this has been a very good stretch for Jaylen Green, but some of it is just the fact that there hasn't been very many good Jaylen Green nights, so there's not a lot of opportunities for it to cross over.
That's fair, but I do wonder that Jaylen Green in some of these nights where and I'm specifically looking at the Pelicans game where he was a more ball dominant player. As good as he has looked in this stretch, I still want the offense running through Alper and Şengün.
Oh yeah.
And if that's something where that would be an issue in preventing Jaylen from having these types of games consistently, then that's an issue, something that we'll have to delve into in the offseason in terms of, okay, if Jaylen can't consistently have these types of games, if we're going to run the offense through Alpe, then we need to make a move. And that's something that I guess they're just going to have to discover over the course of the rest of the season.
Yeah, and they're not completely they're not incompatible players in any way, or at least their games are not incompatible. I do think a lot of it, like you said, is just kind of happenstance of why they can't seem to have good games on the same night. But there's been much more ill-fitting stars that have figured it out by staggering the minutes. Where if Jaylen Green, if there is for some reason they just cannot play together, Jaylen Green has to be the focal point of an offense every time he's on a basketball court. Then you can still have him run bench units and be super overqualified to run bench units while Şengün plays with and against mostly starters. Like that is a very easy thing to accomplish. Part of the reason, because Cam Whitmore plays the same position as Jaylen Green and is very, very, very complimentary to Şengün's game and to a lot of the starters' games as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Rockets will be on the road to take on the Timberwolves tomorrow night, but
I think they're still the 1 seed. Timberwolves.
I believe so.
They're up there.
They're up there. A couple All-Stars and Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. It should be a fun one. Obviously, well, it won't be fun because the Rockets suck on the road and they'll probably lose. But coming up next, we are how many days away from spring training, Sean?
9.
Which is?
9.
Marwin Gonzalez days away from spring training. So we've got a couple Astros questions to dive in before we get to the fun stuff and Mount Rushmore +1 and the worst people and what we love from the weekend sports. So got a little Astros discussion for you coming up next on the Bullpen. He's Sean. I'm Andrew. This is ESPN 97.5, 92.5.
This is The Bullpen, live from the Veritex Community Bank Studios. Here are the producers of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
Bullpen, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Andrew Carlson and Sean Mapes with you till 2 o'clock. So we got 41 minutes left of some incredible sports radio content. If you want to get in on anything we have as we dive into some Astros pre-spring training discussion, you can do that on the HRMP listener line, 713-780-3776. So we are 9 days from spring training, Sean. Nueve, yes. Also, Marwin Gonzalez Day is away from spring training.
Yes, or for the hashtag real Astros fans, Hunter Pence Day is away. The ones that aren't Johnny come-latelys, that aren't Andrew come-latelys.
Sorry, I like winners.
You like cheaters. Marwin Gonzalez, the most clear benefit of the Astros sign-stealing scandal.
The best utility man the Astros have ever had. I will not have you slander his name.
For 1 year.
Yeah, and he was awesome.
And he got super paid and then stunk for the rest of his career.
Look, good for Marwin. All right. He had like 260 and had 20 bombs after he left the Astros.
Okay.
Which is a decent year. After that, he totally fell off a cliff. But
yeah. But also World Series champion. I'm not denigrating. I'm not dragging Marwin Gonzalez down.
You sound like a hater. You sound like an Astros hater right now. You sound like a Marwin hater.
No,
Marwin or Hunter Pence right now? Who are you taking?
Hunter Pence.
Hunter Pence, no question.
Give me the ring, baby. Marwin Gonzalez. Give me the ring.
You take Marwin off that team, I think, besides the one moment he had in the World Series.
You take Marwin off that team, they don't win the World Series.
Besides that moment, I think they do.
You take Hunter Pence off the 2008 Astros, and they don't win 75 games or whatever, man.
They win 60 games instead of 70. Oh, no. What a disaster.
Probably more than that. He's not a 10-win player. Come on.
That team was pretty bad.
Brush up on your war, dude.
How's that? Is that how that works?
Yes.
Okay, so Hunter Pence was only worth like actually 3 wins?
Yeah. Probably.
If you replaced him with, I don't know, Jason Lane or somebody else?
Yes.
Okay.
That's how it works.
Replacement player? Okay.
Yes. If Jason Lane was a 0-WAR player.
I don't know.
That's how it works.
So as we look ahead to Astros spring training, we got a couple questions here. We'll see if we get to both of them. Last week we tried some of this. We got through 2 questions, so I think BMAC had 5 for us, and due to my long-windedness, we got through 2.
And if we were smart, we would have just rolled over the ones that we had from last week.
Yeah, I deleted them, so one of them might be a repeat. I don't really know. So I didn't take the time to go back and listen.
Lost to the sands of time.
Yeah, lost to the sands of bullpen time. So the first question I have for us here, Sean, is which Astro most needs to sustain their breakout from last year in order to help the Astros sort of improve from where they were last season, or at least maintain where they were last year?
I think for me, I mean, Yainer Diaz is kind of like the easy layup answer of someone who, if he can do in 100, 120, 110 games, whatever the normal amount for a starting catcher is, that if he can do that, what he did, or if he can carry over what he did and just at that same rate, just have way more production, that would be absolutely massive addition to this lineup. I mean, you go from feeling like all right about this lineup to like, this is legit, like a contending lineup that they have right now with Yainer basically slotting up. You know, you take your number 9 hitter, who's an awful hitter in Martin Maldonado, and now all of a sudden you have the best hitting catcher in baseball, which what he would be if he played more last year. That to me is like such the I don't know. I feel very basic for saying
no. Yainer is like you're 100% right. Yainer's
he had like what 26 home runs.
Yeah,
and he played 80 something games. So
he had 300 something at bats. If you scale that up to 450, 500 at bats potentially.
Home runs? Yeah,
I mean, ugh.
It would be big if he could carry over that breakout and hit 50 home runs over a full season starting. Call me crazy.
I'm going to bring some negative vibes here because this is something I brought up in Connor and Beard. There is something that does scare me with Yainer a little bit, which is he reminds me a bit of Gary Sanchez when he broke out for the Yankees.
Don't do that.
Where when Gary Sanchez...
Hater.
You called him the Astros hater?
Astros hater.
Look, I'm just saying there's some similarities in their games, and it concerns me a little bit with how free-swinging Yainer's been. And
let the apology be as loud as the disrespect.
I do
all
think
right?
that his contact skills and his bat-to-ball skills are better than Gary Sanchez. So that should be a saving grace.
When we throw this back in your face when Yainer Diaz makes the Hall of Fame, we will cut out that last thing that you said, and we'll just have the criticism.
That he is Gary Sanchez
Yes.
2.0.
To me, he is Gary Sanchez 2.0.
Yes, because that's exactly what I said. I just said that there's some similarities to their games, and
he sucks. Yes, that's what you said.
no, and Gary Sanchez was incredible for his first 2 or 3 seasons with the Yankees, and then people realized, we can just throw sliders away every single pitch, and Gary Sanchez is going to swing at all of them.
It's crazy it took that long for them to figure it out, and it took baseball exactly 1 year to figure it out with Jeremy Pena.
Yeah,
it took them literally 1 year.
And when I was watching Yainer in the playoffs, it did concern me a little bit that he was swinging at some garbage, but at the same time, it's not like he was consistently getting at bats to really find himself in a rhythm, and it was clear that he was pressing at the plate to really try and make an impact. So I'm not going to hold it against him. For me, the answer to this question is Mauricio Dubon. He was someone who I'm hoping he changed up his approach, and I'm hoping that will lead to whatever sustained success we saw from him last season, where he was just, spraying soft contact all over the field and just lofting these little softball liners into the outfield basically all year long. That's something that I think the Astros really need from him, because if Mauricio Dubon returns to who he was prior to last season, all of a sudden those utility innings that you got from him look a lot more dicey, where, Mauricio Dubon's filling in at third for Bregman today. No worries. Altuve missed 20 games. No worries. We got Mauricio Dubon in there, and he's hitting 280, and, he's coming up with big hits when the team needs them. But if we go from that to, Mauricio Dubon's hitting 250, and he doesn't walk at all, then we've got more of a problem.
Yeah, anytime you give a starter a rest day, which happens all the time in baseball, having a guy who can step in and play the position, not just with the glove as well as Dubon does.
Yeah, Gold Glove utility man in the American League this past season.
But then when you add in the Gold Glove utility with what you said, the production that he was showing at parts of last season, that's when you really go like, oh my God,
this guy's very valuable for us.
Not only are you giving Jose Altuve a day off, or if he's on the IL for 2 weeks, now it's not, oh my God, our lineup ends at 7 now, instead of ending at 8. And now extends that lineup, or not extends it, just you don't have the drop off of how many quality MLB hitters that you have in your lineup if Dubon is producing like that. It is interesting that you started off this segment with nothing but love for your favorite Astro of all time, Marwin Gonzalez.
Did not say that.
And now
favorite utility man of all time.
Disrespect to Mauricio Dubon. I'm just saying it feels like you have a type.
Oh, so I like utility men.
Yes.
Look, I'm sorry that I want a player who can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Look,
Okay.
you like who you like, Sean.
Okay.
Don't hate love.
I'm not.
John?
I'm not yucking your yum.
Who would be your Astro that needs to sustain their breakout from last year to help the team improve or at least maintain where they were last season?
Yainer Diaz came to mind immediately, and then Mauricio Dubon was the second one that popped in my mind. I think you nailed it right on the money, Andrew. Having that guy that can come in, he's clearly, if he can hit the way he was, an upgrade from like Aledmys Diaz, So I think that's huge. But I'm gonna say JP France, because
like
the breakout that he had last year. I don't think the Astros are in the position they were last year without JP France.
Not.
So if he can sustain this breakout, he'll be a really good part of this rotation this year. The Astros have a good problem with the amount of pitching. If McCullers can stay healthy, come back and stay healthy, you can get some guys back healthy and maybe get Framber Valdez of old. I think the Astros are in a good spot.
Yeah, I like the shout of JP France a lot, just because on paper, once the Astros get healthy, they should have a lot of depth. But coming into this season, there are going to be a lot of question marks in that starting rotation, because Framber was phenomenal for the first half of last season. The Astros didn't let him go to the All-Star game, and then he just mentally blew up. He just was not the same pitcher. And then Christian Javier was great for, the first month or so of the season.
Yeah.
And then the wheels slowly started to come off, and then the entire car just blew apart. And he sort of rediscovered things a little bit in the postseason, but it wasn't the same. He was a dude that was walking a tightrope basically every single time he went out on the field. So between that, Justin Verlander getting another year older, there are some questions in terms of what the Astros could be with their starting rotation. And if you can get JP France to be, I don't know, 80% of who he was last season, that's going to be a massive, massive boon to this rotation because all of a sudden you're not having to put as much pressure on the rest of those guys. You're not putting pressure on Lance McCullers and Luis Garcia to try and rush things back from their respective elbow/forearm surgeries. And look, if he can be that, it would shore up for me what is one of the biggest question marks I have on this team, which is the depth of their starting pitching.
Yeah, and they need to get through this year, and they have a lot of innings to eat, and JP France can eat them with. Oh, this doesn't really work. Eat them with quality. That's kind of a mixed metaphor. You know what I'm saying though.
He's a quality eater.
Yes, he is a quality eater. He is the Joey Chestnut of the Astros rotation. That would be huge for them to get that level of production, basically out of thin air, like it was last year, where you just pull a guy up from Sugarland and he's you don't have to worry about when he's starting. There's not going to be an absolute disaster every time. And if they can again get that back this year, as you're waiting for guys to get healthy, and the natural attrition that happens in Major League Baseball, where no one ever goes through a full season of, well, all of our starting pitchers stayed healthy. How awesome is this? Like, there are going to be times where you're going to need some depth in that rotation, and if JP France can provide that, that'd be massive.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's enough of the serious conversation because the rest of the show,
get it out of here.
Done with the serious sports talk.
Now it's time for dessert.
Yeah, that's damn right. Up next is the award-winning, groundbreaking, unbelievably unique Mount Rushmore +1 segment. You won't want to miss what we have coming up for you next. So stay tuned. This is the Bullpen, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. That is right. It is time for the groundbreaking, award-winning segment that we pull off 1:30 every Saturday afternoon when the Aggies are not playing sports. That is Mount Rushmore +1. This is the Bullpen, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. I am Andrew Carlson alongside Sean Mapes and John Belmer. And look, this is when the fun begins, right? We're sort of building up our entire Saturday for Mount Rushmore +1.
Yes, we feel the need. If we could, the entire show would be Mount Rushmore +1, and then we'd leave. It would be a 15-minute show. But
I was just going to say Mount Rushmore +1 every segment.
For 2 hours?
For 2 hours.
We could also do that. But we feel the need, and Joe George has made it abundantly clear that we do need to actually talk about sports. So that's what we do.
At least sometimes.
That's what we do for most of the first hour and a half of the show. And then, the last half hour we have some fun.
All right. So without any further ado, who would like to kick off this edition of Mount Rushmore +1? Do you got it, Sean?
Yeah, I'll
Sports entertainment, Sean?
I'll bat lead off.
And news?
What was the I forgot what the acronym was. Terrible. How much brain power did that use? How much wasted brain power happened with what's the and? Oh, or what's the A? Oh, and.
Look, there's a reason I went to the University of Houston, all right? A lot of brain power to waste over here.
Hey, big one coming up for the Cougs. We actually should have mentioned it earlier. The Cougs taking on.
I mentioned it in the first segment.
Yeah, but
deserves multiple mentions. All right, Cougs playing Kansas at 3 in Allen Fieldhouse.
Be there. If you see Andrew on the road, slow down. So he's running.
So
late.
I can pass.
Oh, like you're an ambulance. Pull over to the shoulder. All right, time for the Mount Rushmore +1. This is in honor of Lewis Hamilton going from Mercedes to Ferrari.
Oh, big F1 guy. Yeah, that's
big
right.
Big F1 guy in 2025, which is hilarious that he's announcing a move for 2025.
So explain this to me, Sean. So he essentially has an entire lame duck year driving.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yes. Normally, this will happen in F1, but normally it's the second half of the season. It's around August is when it happens, and they finish up in November, December. This is, to my mind, completely unprecedented of announcing before one season starts that next season you're going to be on a new team.
So. Are they even going to try with his car, or is it just going to be?
Really. They're going to try. Basically, they're going to favor his teammate George Russell in all decisions.
Okay,
for the
but
next year.
this is mind blowing. I will let you continue with the Mount Rushmore +1.
Lewis Hamilton, the greatest, definitely the greatest racer of his generation. One of the greatest racers of all time. But I'll have to admit, it's going to be weird seeing him in a Ferrari fire suit.
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
Mount Rushmore +1s of legends in weird jerseys.
Yes.
Leading things off. I mean, this is to me the gold standard of it. This is the George Washington of Mount Rushmore +1 of legends in weird jerseys. Michael Jordan in a Wizards jersey. It's so strange, and honestly, it gets forgotten. I mean, The Last Dance, they did not mention that he ever played for the Wizards. They did not ever say that he played for the Wizards. It ended for all intents and purposes, his career ended in 1998 when he hit the shot over Byron Russell.
If they made the playoffs, I guarantee you that would have been The Last Dance. But they were like, yeah, you know what? You just dropped 50 points just backing it in and chucking it up. Yeah, we're not putting that in there.
Yeah, awesome. Number 2, Brett Favre on the Jets.
Oh, yeah.
That is such a weird, because that was actually pretty close to a Lewis Hamilton type situation where the Packers did not want to trade him to the Vikings. The Vikings wanted Brett Favre. Brett Favre wanted to go to the Vikings, but they didn't want to trade him there, obviously. And so they traded him to the Jets. And the entire year, you're just like, so you're just kind of on the Jets for now, and then he'll be on the Vikings. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. And he was also on the cover of Madden that year. Do you remember this? He was on the cover.
I do not.
He was on the cover of Madden in that year that he got traded from the Packers to the Jets.
In a Packers jersey or in a Jets jersey?
So they originally he was on the cover in a Packers jersey, and then they re-released it and re-released like a cover for it where he was in a Jets jersey.
The more you know.
Yeah.
Very interesting year for him in New York that year.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
If you want to know more about that, ask Jake Asman. I'm sure he has speaking of The Last Dance, he has a 10-part documentary about the 1 year of Brett Favre in the Jets organization. Staying with football, Ed Reed on the Texans.
Oh, this one hurts, man.
He stunk out loud, and then speaking of the Jets, he was immediately awesome when he went to the Jets that year. But it is weird just seeing like a highlight from that year of a wide receiver running past Ed Reed.
That's all they did when he was on the field, by
and
the
then
way.
going, wait, that's Ed Reed. That's Ed Reed playing for the Texans. That's crazy, and you forget that it happened. But also a legend, one of the best safeties of all time. Weird jersey. Allen Iverson playing for the Detroit Pistons. That was so weird when it happened. So weird, and did not work out. Also kind of weird for him to be in a Nuggets uniform, but they had a little bit more success there. And lastly, Andre Johnson in either a Titans or a Colts uniform, whichever one is weirder to you. They're both weird at the time. Both felt spiteful, but glad he's back in H-Town. Glad that he's back part of the Texans organization.
Man, I'm a little disappointed in you, Sean.
What? I didn't say Messi in Inter Miami?
No. There's a Houston one that I think you're missing here. It's a little bit before our times.
Oh, Hakeem in a Raptors jersey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he played for the Raptors in 1999.
Yeah.
I was 3 years old. I knew that. It was never weird. I never experienced the weirdness of it. It was always just a Wikipedia fact from the moment I started caring about basketball.
That's fair. John, do you want to go next, or do you want me to go next?
Sure, I can go next.
Okay.
Kind of piggybacks off of Sean, but I'll admit Sean's list is way better than mine.
Don't sell yourself short
Let
here,
me
John.
be the judge of that. Let me see how good your
Okay. Well, we both took inspiration from Lewis Hamilton. His was, took probably 10 seconds for him to think of a 10 times better angle to take this off of. I went with all-time greats in American sports that hit free agency and went to different teams. Top 5. Okay, so my number 5 is a very recent guy, but I feel like is already an all-time great because of his uniqueness in Shohei Ohtani going to the Dodgers, going to an iconic, I probably shouldn't say that around here, but an iconic team like the Dodgers. And
more iconic than the Angels.
Definitely more iconic.
Astros haters over
Unless
here.
you want to talk about losing, the Angels are iconic losers. So that's another angle there. But I think Ohtani to the Dodgers is going to be one of the biggest free agency sort of moves we see in the next 10 years.
In our lifetime, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. I went baseball for my number 4 as well, but I went kind of back to the beginning of my years, 1993. Barry Bonds leaving Pittsburgh and heading over to San Francisco. Never won a ring with the Giants, but the impact he had, being one of the greatest baseball players ever.
Do you have another baseball one?
I do not.
I don't want to step. Alex Rodriguez.
Yes.
Going to the,
throw them at me if you got them. I did the ones that I could think about here. Number 3, I went to football. I took the guy who terrorized us in Houston for quite a bit of time, Peyton Manning. In free agency and that debacle, ending up winning a Super Bowl with the Broncos.
Wanted to come to the Texans.
Wanted to
come to the Texans, but
Should've
Gary
been a Texan.
Kubiak said, no, we got Matt Schaub. We're good.
No thanks. And then he ended up winning a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning.
Yep.
Yeah, he did.
Funny how the world works.
Not in Houston.
All right, my last 2, I flip-flopped on. But I'm going to go number 2, the decision. Yeah. LeBron James
has
to the Heat. They won 2 rings. Has to be one of the biggest American sports free agency situations of all time.
It basically started what NBA free agency is now.
The super teams. Yes,
he
absolutely.
didn't invent free agency, but he kind of invented free agency.
Number 1, I think, and everybody can guess it. Brady to the Bucks.
Yeah,
I think it's the number 1. He only won 1 ring with the Bucks, but it's number 1 because not only did he go and prove it, he could do it without Belichick. He changed the conversation because we're not even talking about Belichick the same way anymore. We're not looking at him in the same light. So I think that's number 1 on my list.
I thought about Brady for the weird in a jersey one because him playing for Tampa was weird.
But
we got used to it. But
it just stretched out for such a period of time that you got.
And it helped that he was successful.
Yeah, that's the thing, too. Like, if Brady had gone out and had the season that he had in his final year in Tampa every year there, it probably would have felt different.
Yeah.
But, all right, that leaves me for my Mount Rushmore +1. So this was something that was inspired while listening to the 49ers broadcast last weekend. And this is a conversation I have had about this guy for a little while, and that would be one Ray McLeod III.
Oh yeah.
So,
I know what this is. This leaked in the group text.
yeah. So we
have.
discussed this in the group text between Sean, Brian, and myself, and
We'll add you, Belmer. Don't worry.
this
Don't
is
take it.
a Mount Rushmore +1 of names that are far too cool for how mediocre someone was or is as a player. And so, number 1 on that list for me is Ray McLeod III. If that's not a championship boxer, I don't know what is. Ray McLeod III needs to be a heavyweight champion somewhere. Instead, he is like a average punt returner / special teams guy / 5th or 4th wide receiver.
Yeah, he also feels like a name where you go back and like no Detroit Lion has ever done this since Ray McLeod in 1955.
Yeah, he's either an all-time legend like from way back,
or a heavyweight boxer.
And instead he's just some mediocre
all right punt
returner / kick returner. Up next, this one, the majority of this list is actually Houston themed because these are names that are close to my heart. And this was a name that you mentioned, Sean, Stromile Swift. Stromile Swift tormented the Rockets for years before he came over to Houston, and then he promptly was just very average.
Yeah.
But between the name Stromile Swift, like, by the way, the last name Swift, just phenomenal last name.
Yes.
You pair it with Stromile, you've got the alliteration.
Inventing the name Stromile, by the way, I've never heard of another person named Stromile.
And then he's just a ridiculous athlete on top of that who can throw down these monster dunks, but for whatever reason, just it never clicked here at Houston, unfortunately.
I can't stop thinking the name Stromile.
But just a
Stromile Mapes.
phenomenal name. Number 3, this is a really fun one. Coco Crisp.
Yeah. Coco Crisp.
What's the
because
face,
I don't
Sean?
remember who.
Coco Crisp was a center fielder.
Yeah.
For
Play for the. You probably remember for playing for Boston, the Red Sox, or the Indians.
Wow, that one escapes me. I don't remember that name.
And he was a good player, but he was nothing exceptional.
Yeah, he was a good center fielder.
And look, if your name is Coco, look, I'm expecting some big things, especially if your first name is Coco and your last name is Crisp.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Good is not good enough here.
If he was a little bit better, he could have dominated the cereal game forever.
This is Coco Crisp here for Coco Crisp.
Yeah, like he could have that.
I thought you were making it up because of that.
No.
I thought this was like a game or something. You were tricking us.
No.
Okay.
This is real. And for the next 2, we've got some Houston tie-ins here. Okay. And number 4, LJ Hose. Just a phenomenal name. Look, the fact that you basically, I don't think he ever took a major league at bat, and yet was still selling jerseys and shirts inside Minute Maid Park. That tells you how good this name was.
Because they slapped the number 0 on it.
0 hose.
Wearing a shirt that on the back says 0 hose on it. It's tremendous.
The only thing that could have been better is if you had 69 as his number. That's the only thing that could have made the jersey better.
Also LJ quietly kind of makes the name because LJ is such a weird abbreviation.
But yet it works.
But it works. You're not
works.
Like distracted by it. You're just like LJ Hose.
LJ Hose. Wow.
Sticks in your head.
And then last but not least, the legends, Seth Beer. When he was drafted by the Astros, I was convinced this guy was going to be an absolute phenomenon at the major league level.
Number 1 selling jersey in America.
Dude, the numbers he would have done in Minute Maid Park in the team store with beer and whatever number they wanted to plaster on the back of that, unfortunately, just was not to be.
No. He has to wear the number 99, right?
Oh, you
have to. He has to wear like the biggest number you could possibly wear.
Have to. So that concludes this week's edition of Mount Rushmore +1. Coming up next, we finish things as we always do here on the Bullpen with the worst people in sports this week, or the worst person in sports this week, and the things we loved the most. That is coming up next. Don't miss it. This is the Bullpen, ESPN 97.5, 92.5.
This is The Bullpen, live from the Veritex Community Bank Studios. Here are the producers of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
Bullpen with you for a few more minutes here, ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Andrew Carlson and Sean Mapes with John Belmer behind the glass spinning the tunes. And we're going to finish up the show as we do every single week, and that's by naming our worst person in sports this week and the things we loved. But we got to get the angry stuff out of the way first. Swimming with the angry sharks, I think, as Brian says. So we're going to dive right into the pool infested with angry sharks, and we're going to name our worst people in sports. Sean, who you got?
Worst person in sports this week, Jim Harbaugh. Yeah, you've had it too good for too long, Jim Harbaugh. Everyone kissing your ass. And then you come out and say, as part of this press run as being the new LA Chargers coach, on Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy, quote, "Don't be surprised when/if he's the number one quarterback off the board in the draft. That's my prediction right now." Listen, dude, he's not your quarterback anymore. You don't have to pump his tires, all right? You don't have to lie to America. Don't get on TV and lie to America telling us that J.J. McCarthy might be the number one pick in the NFL draft. Get out of here.
If you believe in him that much, trade Justin Herbert for a slew of picks and go get J.J.
draft
McCarthy.
His ass. I guarantee you he will be available at number 5.
My worst person in sports this week, as I was going to go to John, but John's away from the microphone for a second. So I'm going to name the line makers for UH Kansas that's going to tip off in about an hour and 7 minutes here as the worst people in sports this week. Why the hell would you give Kansas any more ammunition than they already have and already need than to make UH a favorite in Fog Allen? Like, why would you do that? UH is on the road at Kansas, a place where Kansas basically never loses, and they have decided to make UH a favorite. It started off as a 2.5-point favorite. It's been bet down to 1.5, and I, for the life of me, despise the line makers because, look, I appreciate the respect. I do, but I don't want it.
Do you think that Kansas storms the court if they beat U of H?
That would be hilarious.
Yeah,
That would be absolutely hilarious.
They're underdogs.
They are underdogs at home, and there's already so much narrative here with the Cougs being the new power in the Big 12 that we don't need to give Kansas any more ammunition. Just make it a pick 'em. Like, that's all I'm at. Make it a pick 'em. I'm not saying we got to be under. Just make it a pick 'em. Please.
Well, we're not about that life. We don't want heavy as the crown, and we do not want.
I don't want that smoke. I don't want that smoke.
We don't. Because now what's going to happen is, I mean, if Kansas wins, because I do think that U of H is in a good spot to win. But if they win, I mean, now Kansas can go no one believed in us. Everyone crowned their ass. Now we came in as underdog. Yeah, no. This is the worst spot to possibly be in, is to have your team expected to do something that is incredibly hard to do.
Thanks, bookmakers. John, what is your worst person, or who is your worst person in sports this week?
I think it's you.
I don't. Yeah, because I don't have one. Y'all have always done it together with BMAC, so I didn't even think about it. Yeah.
Oh, never mind.
My bad.
Yeah.
No,
Andrew Carlson, worst person in sports.
Yeah.
There you go.
Me tossing it to you, thinking that you had one. That's my apologies.
Yeah. Cam Whitmore pass.
Future, though, I will come up with one.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. I'm sorry.
I think he's not in the rundown as being in this.
No, he's the anonymous duck.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
For anyone with Google Docs, you would understand that. But anyone without that they would be totally clueless. All right, we backstroke, as I have to make Brian McDonald mistake.
How can none of these hosts get I am stunned by that.
As we backstroke from the
It's swimming.
From the pool infested with the angry sharks over to the the pond of tranquility.
Sea of tranquility.
Whatever.
Thanks for listening
Sea of
to the show.
Tranquility. And so
It's not even my saying.
we name the things we loved from sports this week. Sean, what you got?
Thing I love in sports this week: Peter Thiel and a group of venture capitalists. Rare that they're a thing I love, but they are funding the Enhanced Games, an Olympic-style competition that allows performance-enhancing drugs. The events include track and field, swimming, gymnastics, weightlifting, and combat sports. The perfect idea. And finally, what we all would sit back and say, man, if I was a billionaire, know what I would do? I would start the steroid Olympics. Peter Thiel is actually making it happen with his money. Salute to you. I am watching. I'm seated for it. Pay-per-view, whatever it is, whatever it needs to be, I am paying for it.
You think they get the 100-yard dash under 9 seconds?
They should break every record.
All right, for me, the thing that I loved most in sports this week, Sean, is something near and dear to your heart, and that's the Moody Center.
Oh, yeah.
A.K.A. Fertitta North. The Cougs went in there. They kicked some Longhorn ass, and guess what? The Moody Center is a phenomenal environment, phenomenal atmosphere. The amenities are the best for any arena that I have ever been in, so salute to you. You were hospitable, except for the one Texas fan that cursed at some people in our row. But other than that, Moody Center, phenomenal.
You need to hear both sides on that one.
Great experience. And I would say I'm going to be back, but the Longhorns are never going to invite us back. So undefeated in the Moody Center all time. That'll do it for the Bullpen this week. I'm Andrew Carlson. I've been alongside Sean Mapes. John Belmer has been behind the glass, making us sound fantastic all afternoon long. We'll talk to you guys next Saturday at noon, hopefully with Ryan McDonald. Until then. See ya.